Hey guys, Logan here, and welcome to Sunday Thoughts, a series where on every Sunday I give my thoughts on a particular person, place, thing, event, news, etc. And for this Sunday Thoughts video, I'm going to be focusing my thoughts on the Alabama Crimson Tide and Nick Saban, especially after yesterday, Saturday Night Football, when they lost in the Iron Bowl against Auburn, the formerly 15th ranked Auburn Tigers. And not only did they lose to Auburn, this is the third team that Alabama, under Nick Saban, have lost to. The third Tigers team they have lost to since the national championship, where they got dominated by Clemson by 28 points. Which is the largest loss suffered by a Nick Saban coached Alabama team. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this Sunday Thoughts video on Alabama and Nick Saban is not just the fact that Alabama lost to Auburn, but also the fact that this is the first time that Nick Saban and Alabama both lost two regular season games. Since I believe it was 2010, if I'm not mistaken. They lost two games in the regular season for the first time since 2010. If I'm wrong, then I apologize. And it's also the first time that they lost two games in a full season since 2014, if I remember correctly. The last time they lost two games in one full season was after they lost at home against Ole Miss, which was the last time that Alabama lost at home up until LSU this year, and lost to Ohio State 42-35 in one of the national semifinals, which was the start of the college football playoff era. And one thing that tells me about Alabama, especially Alabama under Nick Saban, they have been dominant for more than a decade, right? And this is Nick Saban's, I believe, 13th season coaching the Crimson Tide. And it's it's a long it's a long career as a head coach. Am I right? But no, in all seriousness, I wanted to say, let me say this. If you watch, I would say, episode 23 of LBFT season 2, which was, or no, it wasn't episode 13. It was the season finale, or episode 24 of season 2 of LBFT, where in one part I talked about how Nick Saban's time at Alabama is becoming less and less, or it's becoming more narrow. Not to say, what I mean by that is basically Nick Saban is not going to be coaching the Alabama Crimson Tide for much longer. I said I expect him to coach this team for at least 2 or 3 more years. More so 2 years. The next 2 years, because we live in an era in college football where coaches that are coaching a college football team don't last more than 15 seasons or 20 years for that matter. We live in an era in college football where you don't coach for much longer. When you're in between the 40s and the 50s, possibly late 30s, but mostly early 40s and 50s and stuff like that, or older than that. That's just the era we're living in, at least as far as I'm concerned, we are. And then looking at Nick Saban, him being at the age of 67 or 68. I'm not sure how old he is. Forgive me for not knowing, but he's in his late 60s right now, and he's like I said, he's not going to be coaching at Alabama for much longer. I expect him to coach this Alabama team for within the next 2 years, and after that, he will be in a press conference or wherever else that he goes and announce his retirement from not just coaching at Alabama, but from coaching in college football, because he's getting really old for this. He's getting old for coaching and recruiting and all the other stuff within college football that he has done throughout his entire career, because he's been coaching for longer than even I was ever alive. He's been coaching for probably a decade or two, even before I was born. So the man has a legendary coaching career to look at by many people as one of, if not the greatest college football coach of all time. He having the resume, the record, and the recruiting classes that he had while he was at Alabama, and the national championships in which he won, and all the other accomplishments that he gave to this once great program before he came along. Because before Nick Saban became or was named their head coach, Alabama was in a dark place. Not just one time, but two. And even before the Bear Bryant era started, Alabama was in a terrible, 3-year run in which they only won 4 games? I believe so. And then when Bear Bryant came along, they've been winning 6 national championships and 14 or 15 conference titles within the SEC, and was named SEC Coach of the Year 12 times. So what I'm basically saying is that Nick Saban is kind of like Bear Bryant, but shorter. He accomplished more quicker than Bear Bryant. And now it's not to knock on Bear Bryant, because Bear Bryant has a longevity to remind us that he has one of the greatest coaching careers of all time, if not the greatest coaching career of all time. And then Nick Saban came along and brought Alabama back to what it was great at. And so he's been coaching this team for 13 years, and I would expect his 15th season with the Crimson Tide to be his final season coaching in college football, not just coaching for the Crimson Tide, because we all know Nick Saban is not lasting. His days are numbered at Alabama and in college football as well. So, yeah, that's just how I look at it. But basically, all the purpose of this Sunday Thoughts video is this. We are nearing the end of the Nick Saban era at Alabama. That's the bottom line. The beginning of the end of the Nick Saban era, to me, was the latest national championship game when they got beaten up by Clemson in that national championship game, 41-16, a 28-point loss. That was the one game, that was the one thing in which, to me, was the tip of the iceberg on that we are witnessing the end of the Nick Saban era. Not to say, I'm not saying that this will be the end of the Nick Saban era, or at least this particular season. I'm saying that don't expect Nick Saban to coach this team for much longer than 2 seasons, much longer than within the next 2 seasons, because he's not coaching this team for much longer. He's going to retire at some point, and then after that happens, Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers will be the new kings of college football, being the new Alabama of college football, just replacing Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide as the top team in college football. So yeah, guys, those are my Sunday thoughts on Alabama's loss to Auburn and what it tells me about the Nick Saban era at Alabama. And it tells me that we are nearing the end of the Nick Saban era at Alabama. That's just how I look at it. You might not look at it. You might not look at it the same way I do, and that's fine. We can agree to disagree. But I'm just saying that loss to Auburn for me wasn't the beginning of the end. It was a sign that we are getting closer and closer to Nick Saban ending his career at Alabama by retiring after the next 2 seasons. So yeah, that's just how I look at it. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give it that like button to click, and if you'd like to see future videos from me, make sure to press up there to subscribe, and don't forget to turn on that bell icon so that you'll get notified about my latest videos. Have a great day, and as always, fight the good fight.